has become 3 to 4 times more potent than it was only a few years ago. Newer products can have levels of THC as high as 85% to 90%. The marijuana level in a typical joint 20 years ago was closer to 5%. And a paper published in 2020 by one of my next guests analyzed past cases of violence in marijuana use, looking specifically at the deadly attacks. So, in researching the Parkland and Sutherland Springs mass shootings, the Times Square attack in 2017, and the Boston Marathon bombing, his study found recurring consequences of marijuana induced paranoia and marijuana induced psychosis. It also found that more potent marijuana resulted in a greater risk for psychosis. So, the reaction to our angle last night about this was so massive that this follow up was in order. There's still much to learn about the Uvalde shooter. We haven't gotten his toxicology report yet, but it is worth exploring, is it not, given what we've already learned? The Daily Mail reports his father spent time in jail for multiple assaults and possession of marijuana. The Washington Post reports multiple people told them about his mother's drug use, and a neighbor even reported she was about to be evicted over it. Independent journalist Ali Bradley told the Ingram Angle that Ramos's grandfather served time in prison for drug trafficking. So, given his family history, it stands to reason that someone surrounded by illicit drugs could have potentially had access to them as well. So, considering the horrific carnage here from other tragedies we already know about where high potency cannabis may have played a role, it's important that Americans have more answers. We deserve to know the truth about this multi-billion-dollar and growing industry, how it's affecting our young people, our working age population, and even our military readiness. Joining me now is Dr. Norman Miller, addiction psychiatrist, and Dr. Eric Voth, physician resident of the International Academy on the Science and Impact of Cannabis. Now, Dr. Miller, your response tonight, please, to those who casually dismiss what studies, including your paper, which was an aggregator of many of these, found between violent psychotic behavior and sustained high potency marijuana use.
Well, it's exactly what you said. It's hidden. I'm interested in the association of marijuana and violence, and when I hear these unfortunate incidences, the unthinkable mass shooting in Texas, I look to see if marijuana was involved. And I find often that the newspapers, the media, hide it when it really is a major factor. And if we're as a country are really interested in solving the gun violence problem, I think we're going to have to look under the rock and look at the role of drugs, particularly marijuana.
Marijuana, it's pronounced. Huge lobbying efforts, multi-billion dollars on the line. People rushed ahead. And when you talk to folks, like, oh, it's a harmless drug and minimal effects. It's so much better in so many ways than alcohol. I mean, you hear the litany of the propaganda out there. But how much do we need to learn about this, the endocannabinol receptors and how the THC of today affects those?
I think it's really clear that the higher the percentage of THC in marijuana or the vapes or the oils, the greater the likelihood of violence and psychosis. And I compliment Dr. Miller, who also had a great article back in 2017, same way. And I think this is clearly driven by a marijuana industry that's looking to profit off of people's suffering. They have just walked past standards of care. This whole medical charade is really nothing more than a way to try to get marijuana justified and in people's hands. And I think it's time that more federal oversight and step in and trying to roll back this terrible mess. I mean, I call it a runaway train, and we're riding this thing to a real point of disaster, I think.
Now, here's a doctor based in Colorado talking about what she sees in the emergency room. Watch.
These patients come in and they have like repeated vomiting or acute psychosis. They tell us it's super hard to stop, which says to me it's addictive.
How do you know that these are directly THC reactions.
So we track it by urine drug screens, and that tells us THC.
Now, that was from July 2021, Dr. Miller. So we decided to check in with Dr. Karen Randall to see if anything has changed. And she responded telling us, invite any
Today's
politician to
date,
spend a
June
day in an ER.
1st,
They need to see the
2022.
endpoint of legalization from our side. Desperate families, psychotic addicted children. This is going to be a substantial problem for our country. Dr. Miller, are you surprised?
Surprised at what she's seeing in the emergency department, or surprised that this is the end point or the progression? I wouldn't say it's the end point yet, I don't see the end, but a progression of making marijuana so available. I mean, there's very few controls. I mean, people can walk into a dispensary and just buy marijuana. If you flood the market with a highly toxic, highly dangerous, highly addicting drug is defined by Congress's own controlled substance laws, that is highly mentally disturbing. I don't think you need to be a doctor to figure that out. But
Yeah,
it's above the politicians right now.
Now, we have Republican politicians who've been, been singing the praises of the marijuana industry, including a congresswoman in South Carolina, I think Nancy Mace. She's all for pushing the decriminalization on a federal level. There's some in the media, Dr. Voth, who are quick to dismiss raising this issue at all, even discussing it at all. This was today. Watch. Why aren't people in general not talking more about the pot, psychosis, violent behavior connection?
Kids can get an assault weapon. That's the issue. It's not if people are smoking too much weed. You know that, Laura. You should know that. It's not the weed. People who smoke weed are not carrying AR-15. Right. Okay. They don't even know where they put them. Okay.
Dr. Voth, how funny is that? Really funny.
Well, I'll tell you, that's not funny at all. And the reality of it is, legal AR-15 owners or handgun owners that are not stoned, that are not violent, are not killing people. If you look through the same information that the doctors are pointing out here, and you go case by case by case, you see a very clear pattern. There's a particular pattern at about 10 to 15% THC, and this risk increasing. And we're seeing out there with the vaped forms and the oils, 70, 80, 90% THC. That's not only horribly toxic, but it's psychosis and violence inducing. I think back to Chris Kyle when he was murdered. What did he do? He and his partner were trying to help a PTSD sufferer who then smoked pot and killed Chris and his partner the next day. And that really tweaked me.
Thank you for raising that, which I had forgotten. Dr. Miller and Dr. Voth, we're going to continue on this conversation, not now, but at a future date. It's so important, and I thank both of you. Now, here's